This video has been brought to you by DataVinci Analytics Agency.
Welcome everyone, this is Srinivas from DataVinci Analytics Agency. Today in this video, we're going to learn about CSS element selectors and tag management. We're going to use the Google Tag Manager tool as an example to learn and understand this element selectors and tag management. Now, why do we need to learn this? What is its importance? CSS selectors plays a very crucial role in tag management mainly because of these three reasons. CSS selectors can access and target any element in a web page. So that makes it easier to define tags, triggers, and create variables based on DOM elements. CSS selectors can also work with multiple elements at the same time. So if we need to create tags for multiple elements, for example like multiple button clicks with the same tag parameters, then instead of creating multiple triggers to access each and every element, we can create a single trigger with all the elements based on their element selectors. Using CSS selectors is a simple and robust way to target DOM elements and define events on them in tag management. Apart from element selectors, the other way to target DOM elements is to use custom JavaScript. For that we need to create a separate variable for every selection, and then we need to use that variable for all events. That is somewhat complex when compared to using element selectors, as we need to use different JavaScript functions for targeting a single or group of elements. That's why CSS selectors are preferred over JavaScript for targeting DOM elements. We'll just directly dive into the CSS selectors in tag management with GTM as reference. So now I have a GTM container here and I have a demo website here. So now we'll see using this GTM container and this website, we'll see how to use CSS selectors in tag management. And now in GTM, usually we use CSS selectors in mainly three different types as three different references. The first case is when we need to create a DOM element variable. So like for maybe for web scraping or any other purpose, let's say we are using a DOM element variable. So to create the DOM element variable, so to retrieve that element, we can use CSS selectors. That's the first case. And the second case is when we are configuring an element visibility trigger. So when we are configuring an element visibility trigger, then we can use CSS selectors to retrieve that element as a selection method. Now the third case is when we are dealing with click variables like click elements. So if when we need to create triggers based on click elements, then we can use the CSS selectors as a matching criteria for the click elements. So these are the mainly the three cases we're going to discuss right now using this demo ecom website and this container. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for now, let's dive into this site. So this is an e-commerce site where we can buy all the fashionable products like shoes, jeans, shorts, like bags, shoes, and everything. So in this website, let's say right now, I already configured this GTM container to this website, so there's no need to worry there. So let's say now I'm clicking on this product, this dark brown jeans product. So now I need to get this name. So let's say I want to retrieve this name of the product. So in this case, what we can usually do is you need to web scrape this in these cases. So to get this name, we'll do the web scraping in this thing in GTM. So we'll create a variable as a DOM element variable for web scraping. So let's create one variable for web scraping. So I'll name this as product name. So I created a variable name product name. So now this should be a DOM element variable. So here we can see the selection method as ID or CSS selector. So as we are learning about CSS selectors now, I'd like to use CSS selector. We can also use as an ID selection method because IDs are always unique. So now to get the element selector, what we need to do is now we just need to go to the site and we just hover over this element and right click it, and then you can see inspect here. So just click on inspect. If you click on inspect, then you can see this element, the code of this element here. See, if I'm hovering over this h1 element, then it is highlighting the title there. In this h1 element contains the dark brown jeans content. So now I need to retrieve this element to get this dark brown jeans as our product name. So to retrieve this element, I'm going to use CSS selector. Here we have a class attribute defined for h1. So we can use class selectors here. Class selector means we get this class value as a CSS selector, and then we'll use this in the GTM. So now I have a class here called product underscore title space entry hyphen title. So all we need to do is we need to use this. So to prevent any duplications for this thing, we'll just start from here, this div nav h1 jeans. So in this case, all I need to do is first we'll check summary, entry summary, start with. So double click on this element to select it, and double click in and click on Ctrl C to copy it. So now I'm copying it. As we paste it, as it is a class attribute, for every class attribute we need to put a dot here. As we are using class selectors, before every class selector we need to put a dot, and if there is a space between two different class selectors, then we need to combine them and just put a dot before it. As we have, as summary and entry summary belongs to the same element and they are separated by space, so all we need to do is we have summary as a separate class and entry summary as a separate class. We need to combine them, so we need to put dot before summary and dot before entry summary, and we need to combine them without spaces. And we can optionally we can also add this element name. So as it is a div element, I'll add div dot summary dot entry summary. Next we need to give space or greater than, because as it is a child we can use greater than. Now we need to navigate to this nav. Here we have nav. Nav also has a class, so we can use this class selector. Just double click on it and Ctrl C for copy. The class is WooCommerce hyphen breadcrumb. So greater than, we'll just paste it. WooCommerce breadcrumb. As it is a class, again we need to put a dot before. There are no multiple classes, it is only single class, so there's no need to combine anything here. Optionally we can also add the element name before this one. So as it is a nav element, I can say nav dot. Now I'm selecting this element, and as it is as a is a child of nav, I can say greater than, or we can also give a space. There's no need, we can also use space or greater than. For now let's use space, as it is easy. So now we have a has no element, we have h1 only, we don't need to go for a. Wait, h1 is not present inside nav, so there's no need to give nav here. So we can directly say summer entry, and inside that we have product title, entry title. There's no need to specify WooCommerce hyphen breadcrumb. I didn't see this. I thought that h1 is present inside now, so that's why I gave WooCommerce breadcrumb here. So there's no need to give now here. We can directly say h1 product title here. So we can directly remove this nav dot WooCommerce hyphen breadcrumb and space. Then we have h1 here. So the class of h1 is product underscore title space entry hyphen title. So we'll just double click it and Ctrl C for copy it. As it is a h1 element, we use h1 dot before the class and product title, and we have a space between two different classes, so we need to combine it with a dot, remove the space. So now I got this my CSS selector to get this h1 element. So for web scraping I need to get this product name. So for that I need to get this element with this title. So this is h1 and it is present inside a div. So I'm directly accessing it with div h1. So summer entry summary, product title, entry title. That's it. So now I'm creating a product name variable with CSS selectors. So there's no need to attribute name. We can optionally give class attribute name as it is a class. So there's no need for now. There's no need because we are using a hierarchical selection, not a single element selection. So there's no need to give for an attribute. So I'm saving it. That is our first purpose of our CSS selectors in GTM when we need to create DOM elements. Now coming to our second one, which is for using element visibility triggers. Let's say I increase the quantity and I clicked on add to cart. Now there's nothing in here, but when I clicked on add to cart, you can see this thing is came into the screen. That means it was not there before, but when you add something to cart, this element is displayed here. So now this can be considered as an element visibility event. So for this element visibility, we can use the CSS selectors to create triggers. So now to hover for this element, to check for this element in the code, we need to hover over it and click on inspect here. So when I clicked on inspect here I can see this is the element for this dark brown jeans. So to check in layer, here we can see it is a div. Inside this div we have the 3 into dark brown jeans have been added to your cart. So if we get this element using selector, we can directly get this element. So for now, let's create a trigger for element visibility. Let's say I'm saying it's add to cart notification trigger. Configuration, again, as it is an element visibility trigger, I select element visibility. Our selection method is CSS selector. There is another way to actually select an element, and that is how go to the element in the source code and right click on it. There you can see copy selector. If you select this thing, then you are selecting this particular element. But in this case, we don't only have this one product in our e-commerce site, we have multiple products. So if I use this selector, it only selects this element but not on all pages. So that's why if we need to select elements on all pages, we need to do it in a group way, as because we need to select multiple elements when multiple elements came into screen. So that's why we need to use as general as possible. At the same time, we need to make it as accurate as possible. So here we can see that this div container is same for all products, because we can see it only describes a particular element, it only describes a particular div container. So, and also we can use this WooCommerce message, as this WooCommerce message is only describes this particular container, and this container is same for every product. So in those cases, and also we can say that because I'm assuming that most of the cases classes are given to elements which are similar. Like, let's say, as this indicates a notification, a message. So for all products, we can assume that the class name is same for this kind of elements in all pages. So that's why we can directly select this particular class attribute value to create an element visibility trigger based on our element selectors. So I'm double click on this and Control C for copying it. So element selector is this. As it is a class, we can directly say dot, and as that is an element div element, we can directly say div dot WooCommerce -message. So now we can directly say every time an element appears on the screen, or we can say once per page, once per element. It is just a customization, but accurately we have to say every time an element appears on the screen. So every time this element appears on screen, we are firing this trigger. So now we can set it to 100. It doesn't matter. So we are using element selectors to create element visibility triggers. So I save it. So to see the event, event firing for this trigger, we need to create a tag. So let's create one tag for this. Let's say to cart. Add to cart notification. So as it is a UA property, I'm using UA, so I make it UA, and we'll say as it is a notification and action displayed, and it belongs to this page. We can directly say label as the page URL. So we can select page URL as a label and after that we have settings variable tracking ID, and we'll select our add to cart notification trigger here. So we'll save this tag. So now we created our element visibility trigger based on CSS selectors. Now our third purpose for CSS selectors in tag management is, for click elements. So let's say I have these buttons, the shop now button, checkout button, and all the buy now button, and all these buttons. So I need to find out, like I want to find out how many button clicks a user is making in his session. So that's why if I wanted to find out, I can directly create a click event for all these buttons based on CSS selectors again. So we'll just create a tag, click on new, then it is a UA event, is a button click. Event, here it is a button, or you can say CTA or something like that, as it is clicked. A label is text, click text. We can directly see which button is clicked based on the label. So tracking ID, now we'll create trigger for the button clicks. In this trigger you can say button click trigger. As it is a click event, we'll see click all elements, and as we only need to fire it on some button clicks, we say some clicks. And now our click element here, we can see that matches CSS selector. So this is how we use CSS selectors in the third way. Like this is how CSS selectors can be used in tag management for triggering click events. So like our click element or any other element, any other data variable, so if it matches the particular CSS selector, then we can fire that event. So let's say for our button, let's check our buttons selection criteria. Like I have a span here, it says element or button text, but we don't need to click on this particular area. Someone clicks on this white box and not on this particular text. So but this spans only on this text. So what we need to do is we need to find this entire buttons element, so which is this div. If we see this div element widget container, it is spanning over this entire box. So wherever we click on this box, we can directly fire this event. So or we can also say element or button wrapper also. So let's create it on widget container. So I'm double click on it, Control C for copy, dot Control V, as it is a div element, space again. In that we have element or button wrapper. So let's copy it, Control C, dot Control V, and also it is a div, another div. So it's saying optionally, we don't need to specify div, but optionally to just make it more meaningful, I'm using it. In that I have a, in that I have span. So we don't need to specify a or span here because they are only spanning over this particular area. Instead we can directly say star. A star means wherever it clicks inside this container, in which element, it doesn't matter. If you click on an element which is child to this particular container, then also this event fires, this trigger fires. So I'm saying the div dot element or button wrapper space star. So if you click on an element which is this wrapper or a child to this wrapper, then also this trigger will fire. So that makes it easy. So if you click create the event, create the trigger on a or span, then it only fires when you click on this particular text. But if you click on this white box, it won't fire. So that's why using star is very important here. So now I created an click element trigger here. So let's save it. So let's save this tag. So now we'll just preview what the things that we have just created. So go to preview, and we have our Google Assistant. This is a site. Just click on connect. So to see just do all the things that we have done. So let's check for the first one, which is our DOM element. So let's go to a particular page. Like we created it on dark jeans, but let's go to this basic gray jeans or any other page. Like I'm going on DNK blue shoes. So now I've opened this page. Now we'll see our variable is capturing this particular text or not. So for that, this is let's see our container. So this is our container. Go to the container. Let's go to variables, and we'll check it here. The one that we have created is this product name. So this product name is populating with the value DNK blue shoes. So that means our variable, that's our DOM element variable, is working perfectly. So by web scraping and using CSS selectors, we created a variable which is working fine, very good. And after that, we need to check our element visibility trigger. So let's add something to cart in this page. So this element comes into view, and we'll see. Check now. This we have element visibility here, and our tag is firing. Our add to cart notification tag is firing on this element visibility. So this is working perfectly. Now we created a CSS selector based trigger on this add to cart notification tag to fire every time this element comes into view. So that's why it is firing on this element visibility event. So our trigger, this trigger also working fine. Our element visibility trigger is also working perfectly. And the third one is our buttons. Let's see our shop now buttons are working fine or not. So here now I clicked on shop now. I'm using the control click to just to still remain on this page. So I'm using control click. See, I clicked on it, it is opened in another page. So again I'm using another click. Here I'm clicking shop now again, it is opening another page. Again control click, yeah, it opens another page. Again control click, another page. So I clicked on the buttons 4 times right now. So we'll see if it fires 4 times. See, I have 4 click events here. So for every click event we need to check our button click tag is firing or not. So for the first event it is firing good, very perfect. And our second button click also it's working fine. Our third button click also it's working fine. Fourth button click also working fine. So for all click events our button is working, our button tag is working fine. See, this all selector we just need to write this much only. So this much selector is matching to this much selector, because it is the original selector. I told you, if you right click on the selector, when you go to something, and let's say click on checkout. So this is the checkout selector. So if you right click on this, and if you copy the selector, you get this, you'll get this one. But there's no need to copy this entire thing. All we need to do is make it very make it simple as possible and make it as accurate as possible. So that's why we need to create the general terms. So that's why I only need to consider this element button wrapper here, which indicates this button. So that's why I'm only more focusing on this particular buttons which have similar classes. So that's why all these are working fine. So this is how we use element selectors in GTM, and element selectors are very important when we are using them with tag managers, and they plays a very crucial role for optimizations in tag management. So the other way is to create all these things by using custom JavaScript codes. If we use custom JavaScript, we need to create variables for all these things. Now we have done. Now we only created one variable for the DOM element, and we didn't create any other variable. But if we use custom JavaScript, we need to create a variable for our element visibility trigger also, and also for our button click we need to create another variable, a custom JavaScript variable. So that's why it is somewhat complex when we compare it to CSS selectors. So that's why CSS selectors plays a very crucial role in GTMs. Now, as we have seen how important CSS selectors are in tag management, now we'll just check what are different CSS selectors that are present. I'm not going very deep into this topic. We'll just see the overview of all the CSS different selectors that are present. So let's check into our last topic, and that is different CSS selectors. And different CSS selectors are universal selector. Universal selector, it selects all the elements. Like if you say star in the tag or the trigger or the click element that we're matching with the CSS selector, that means it selects all the elements that are child or that particular element. Like, if you are selecting a particular element and if you say star, like in the previous case we used star in for click elements, right? So that means we are selecting that particular element and its children elements also. So that is indicated by star. If you if you use star on body tag or HTML tag, that means you are selecting all the tags that are present in the HTML container. And after that we have type selector. Type selectors means that is we are selecting the tag with name. So like we did before, we used class selectors, and before the class selectors we wrote name as an optional selector. So if you remove those class selectors, if you remove those class attributes, we can directly give the name also. So that is indicated by type selector, and that is name selector also. So it selects elements with given name. Like if I have an a tag or paragraph tag, h1 tag, so we directly write h1pa in the selectors as selectors. So that is type selector. And the next one is class selector. Class selectors is we select the element based on its class attribute value. So if after taking the value of the class attribute, we need to put a period before the value. So it is indicated by dot. So we place a dot before the value, and after the dot we paste the class. And if there are multiple class values in that particular element, we need to join all those classes and remove space, and before each and every class value we need to put the dot, like we have done before. And after class we have ID selector. ID selector, we only need to specify ID. There's no need to add anything else, because ID is unique for each and every element in a page or in a site. ID is unique for all elements. So if we want to select a particular element, we can directly give hash space the ID value. So no space, hash ID value, sorry. So yeah, if you specify hash ID value, that means you are only selecting that particular element. So we can't group with ID selectors, because if there are no two elements have same IDs. So that's why ID selectors, if we use a particular ID selector, we can only select one element at a time. If we want to select multiple ID selectors, we need to use the grouping selector, which we're going to discuss now. That is about ID selectors. It is indicated by hash. And similarly, as class, we use dot before element. When we need to use class selectors, we need to use hash before that element value when we need to use ID selectors. After ID selectors we have attribute selectors. So there are many attribute selectors, like to select an element based on its attribute. Like if I say I have other than class and ID, like for script, let's say we have type attribute. So also we have style attribute also. So based on those attribute values we select this element, and these are the different notations that are indicated for attribute selectors. So yeah, after this we have grouping selectors. So grouping selector is nothing but comma. So if we want to use multiple if you want to target multiple elements at the same time, and if they don't have any patterns, and that's why all we need to do is first specify the first element selector and separated by comma. After the comma, we can directly specify the second element selector. So in this way, we can group multiple elements at the same time, and we can select multiple elements at the same time, even though they don't have any patterns. After that, we have combinators. Combinators is like, we target a particular element when it is related to that related to an element. Like, first we have descendant combinator. Descendant combinator means when an element is a child of another element. So if we want to select an element which is a child of another element, first we need to specify the parent element and then space. Then we can directly specify the child element. It is now it understands that the first element is a parent and the second element is child, and the second one is child combinator. Child combinator means it is a direct child combinator. In descendant combinator, the parent can be an ancestor. Like, it need not be a direct parent or direct child. So it can be an ancestor. That means the first element can be an ancestor, and the second element can be the child of the first element, or like that. So it can be it can be anywhere in the hierarchy. But when it comes to child combinator, the second element should be a direct child of the first element. So that's why it should be a direct parent for the selecting element. So if you say the first element greater than second element, means the first element is a direct parent of the second element, or the second element is a direct child of the first element. And the third one is general sibling combinator. General sibling combinator is if two elements are siblings, like the parent element of those two elements is same, then we can say it's general sibling combinator. So let's say if we have two elements, they need not be adjacent, so they can be anywhere in the hierarchy, but the parent of these two elements should be same. So in this case, we use the tilde selector. It is indicated by the tilde symbol, so that is general sibling combinator. So the first element tilde second element, that means first element is a general sibling of the second element, or the second element is a general sibling of first element, anyhow. So and the fourth one is adjacent sibling combinator. Adjacent sibling combinator means the first element should be an adjacent sibling of the second element. That means they should be adjacent. They should be consecutive. So in that case only we use adjacent sibling. It is indicated by plus. So if you say first element plus second element, that means first element is the adjacent sibling of the second element. It should be a sibling also. That means the parents of both the elements should be same. It is general sibling and adjacent sibling are like somewhat similar. Like we can use adjacent sibling with general sibling symbol, but we can't use general sibling combinator as an adjacent sibling combinator. And after this, column combinator. Column combinator means if we want to select something in which is presented in a table, like first we select elements. We select we have first element double what we said with the pipe symbol, and after that we have the second element, right? So the first element, we select the criteria that is matched by the first element, and then after that we go to the second elements that are matched. If you understand what I mean, like first we select the selection criteria for the first element, and after matching the first element with the criteria, then we go check the second element. And if there are some elements that matches the second element criteria also, then we call it a column combinator. It is mainly used in tables. So these are all the different CSS element selectors that are present, and this is how CSS selectors plays a very crucial role in tag management. And to conclude this video, we'll just see CSS selectors are used to target any element in a web page based on their position. It can be unique, or you can match different elements at the same time based on their patterns, or you can group different elements even though they don't have any similarities. And CSS selectors can be very simple or very complex. But if they are complex, that means they are very liable, like they are very fragile. So if some part of the chain is changed, then the entire chain is it becomes invalid. So that's why it is very best, it is always best to create a selector which is simple and not long chain, to prevent the errors which occur when the position of an element which is in the chain are changed. The third one is in GTM, CSS selectors plays a very big role in selecting all the elements needed to create different types of triggers, tags, and variables. Mainly, we check the element visibility triggers, the DOM element variables, and click element CSS selectors, matches CSS selectors types. So these are this is how we need to use, or this is the importance of CSS selectors in tag management. Thank you.
We hope this video was helpful. We would really love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you liked it, please show some love by liking and subscribing. Thank you. Wish you well.